Hello there, you're watching The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. This afternoon, Ghana's IMF program is in danger. The fears of German ambassador to Ghana, Daniel Kroll, as he calls for all hands on deck to convince China to relieve Ghana of its external debts.
With all that together, we are quite confident that Ghana can find a way out of this severe financial crisis. But as I mentioned, time is more of the essence than ever before.
Exactly what are the concerns? We'll get you the details shortly. There's a lot also happening in Parliament as the minority there is raising concerns about the new constitutional instruments being laid by the Electoral Commission on the use of the Ghana cards for its progressive registration. We'll get you the details from the House shortly. And we're also building up to the elections in Nigeria with just hours. That crucial general elections will definitely be crossing over to get the latest as preparations are underway by the Independent National Electoral Commission for that general democratic exercise. It's all coming up here on The Pulse, and let's just know The Pulse as always is brought to you by Global Communities Dignity Lu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. We're on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. This is The Pulse. We're back with details shortly. Well, let's talk about Ghana's economic recovery, because JoyNews is learning that Ghanaian authorities are unable to reach relevant officials in China, making it difficult for negotiations to commence on the country's proposal for a domestic debt restructuring. For now, a planned trip by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to China has been put on hold as Ghana pursues all available diplomatic channels in a bid to convince the country's biggest external creditor to accept Ghana's proposal for a debt relief. For days now, the government of Ghana has been engaging the German government and its officials to use their leverage in the Paris Club of G20 to convince China to accept the debt restructuring. However, addressing a press a while ago, the German ambassador to Ghana, Daniel Kroll, says there will be a need for more hands on deck to actually encourage China to sign up to that debt relief program.
The President, the Minister of Finance have appealed to the German visitors to support Ghana in convincing China to come to the table. We are ready to do that. We already are in that. At the same time, I would like to encourage all Ghanaians who have strong ties with China, who are doing nice business with China, to also engage them and convince them that it's time to sit down with all the other creditors and agree on a package. Time is of the essence. Time is running out. Without this agreement with the bilateral creditors, the IMF package is in severe danger. So, if there's any Ghanaian member of Parliament listening who is very much engaged with business in China, please make best use in the interest of Ghana and the people in Ghana. I said Germany is prepared to help. And there's another criterion, and that is that we, of course, expect that Ghana itself, the government of Ghana, is taking the important steps that are needed to move this country, to move the people, the families out of this crisis. And there are important steps to take. On the revenue collection side, it's about property tax collection. It's on the expenditure side. It's about, basically it's about the energy sector. And of course, government spending in total. So there's an important homework to be done here. And we encourage the government to take all the necessary steps in due course. With all that together, we are quite confident that Ghana can find a way out of this severe financial crisis. But as I mentioned, time is more of the essence than ever before. And I encourage all stakeholders in this process to do their very best to come to a conclusion in a very, very timely fashion. Thank you very much. it's on the Minister of Finance to comment on his travel schedule. We just know from past experience in the case of Zambia that China has been, in previous cases, very reluctant to enter into setting up this creditor committee, which is the key decision to take now. And we hear that so far the Ghanaian government has not been successful in reaching out to the relevant authorities in Beijing and to enter into direct talks with them. As I pointed out, we are trying to engage with China, but it is a very China is a big player and has its own agenda, including a complex agenda with Africa. And so I'm afraid it might not only be about Ghana, but might be about the relations with Africa. And we must be aware that Ghana is not isolated. There are other countries in similar difficulties. And so whatever decision is taken in favor of Ghana, we must be aware that other countries then will ask for the same treatment. And this is what makes it so complex. And this might be the reason why China is so hesitant to move ahead with Ghana. Because they fear that that might then have implications on many other engagements they have with other African countries. As you know, China is one of the major creditors to many countries in very strategic sectors, and at the same time, the Chinese economy is not in best state ever. So that might be part of the complexity in this case. So if we are willing to delay the debt payment from Ghana, what is Ghana using this fiscal space for? And we would consider it as unfair if that would be used to serve the debt to someone who is not willing to be part of the aid package for Ghana. We would think that is not fair, and I think that is also not in the interest of Ghana. So it's not about, it's less.
Well, so that's the latest we're getting from the German ambassador to Ghana, Daniel Krul. But what are the possible opportunities that we could explore out of these revelations that are coming through, especially from the business community? Because the ambassador was clear they're asking the Ghanaian business community to also trigger some talks on the side as the German government works around the clock to equally convince China on that external debt restructuring. I want to bring in two individuals. Dr. Ishmael Holonvo is an international relations expert at the University of Education, Winneba, studied at some point in China, I believe. So he has a lot of experience going into that. Dr. Joseph Obeng is president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, all joining me via Zoom. But let me start off with you, Dr. Joseph Obeng, because this is a passionate appeal, if I may call it that way, to your community. The German ambassador acknowledging that China is not willing at this moment to carry out that debt restructuring program with the Republic of Ghana. And looking at the trade volumes, it appears that the business community will be the way out now. What's your take on the appeal that's coming through from the international community?
Yeah, I think it's in the right direction. Coming from a diplomat like an ambassador to Germany means that maybe there's some kind of precedent in some of these negotiations, even in the European countries. It means, therefore, that we also have to put up an initiative in this regard, the trading community. If you look at the huge volume of Chinese trading community here, the Chinese businesses that is springing up everywhere, it is also in their own interest that we can coordinate with such businesses here and reach out to the Chinese government, because we have reached a state that we need this debt forgiveness so that government can have some respite, and also to pave the way for IMF also to be able to implement the deal with Ghana. So it is very important. And much as the only problem is that we do not have the precedent yet, and you know China is very strict in its dealings, such as this. Sometimes you have to channel your grievances through your government, and so we'll find out a lot. We'll find out questions and find out some answers to some of these questions, and then find a way to partner with the Chinese businesses here and other stakeholders, including AGI and Chamber of Commerce and all that. If that will be, that is a possibility, then we do not have to wait and then proceed to fund all possible avenues to complement the efforts of government to have this debt restructuring.
Okay, then I was just about to go there, just to inquire from you what sorts of relations or channels you've created with the Chinese business community. For instance, on the side of Guta, do you have some associations, some business groups that you belong to that may be critical to this external debt restructuring with China?
Yeah, we have direct access to their embassy, and this is how far we can go. But to talk of reaching out to the government itself. But once their embassy is here, is the same way. Whatever thing that we're able to negotiate or be able to convincingly tell them will be communicated to their government. So I think it's a good call coming from the ambassador, and I believe that in negotiations like this, the business community also have a role, and maybe it has happened to the German government before. That's why he's calling on the business community to also put its weight on this effort to convince China to help us to forgive our debts.
I guess he was speaking about the trade volumes, the fact that we import so much from China. Don't you feel that, first of all, that's part of the challenge we're facing as a country? The fact that you, the traders, are part of why we are here today. If we're not trading as much with China, they wouldn't have mattered, been of importance to us.
Trading is global. Even Germany is trading more with China, more than China. If you look at the balance of trade, it's always in favor of China, even regarding to the US and the bigger countries. So we cannot say that we will not trade. We will trade, but in this particular thing, we have a relationship with China that goes back to the era of our first president, and that this relationship have grown in stature to the extent that now the trading that we do with China is also helping China. So sometimes the bigger partner should be able to come to the rescue of the smaller partner. We have a relationship, no doubt about that. So we cannot, China or the bigger countries cannot pretend not to come to the rescue of their smaller partners. And we should find a way as a business community to also influence the Chinese government, knowing the kind of role that we also play in the economy through trading, as you have already said. But the fact that we trade does not mean that it is the major effect of the problem that we are having as a country. Every country do trading, and we are also trying to learn through trading, learn the ways of China, so that we can also manufacture.
Okay, so you're not admitting the fact that you're part of the problem and that you're contributing to that high import bill from China.
Definitely, excessive importation is not good for the country, and I've always been saying this. And I've said that even the local share in this program is very negligible. And then the bigger problem even comes from the expatriates, which includes the Chinese themselves. Look at the volume of the dumping that they do here. They do dump all manner of things here. So sometimes if you have to go in that tangent, we can also say that they are also part of this problem. Because they import the highest volume into the country as compared to the indigents. Our share in the importation, the whole importation, is about less than 20% even. And they do the bulk of it. And that's why we are saying that if it comes to this, that we have to influence the Chinese government, we'll do that with their business people here. And they can do it better even with us.
Are you set to do that? Let's talk about what will happen. Will you accept that challenge and begin talks? Will you open negotiations with the Chinese business community here in Ghana?
If the need arises, now the call has just begun with the German ambassador, and then all the stakeholders, not only Guta, will have to think, because it is in our own interest that the government also have some respect, because we are being choked with this debt. And that's, if you're able to do that, it will go a longer way to help boost business activities in this country.
Okay.
So the benefit will go to us, the indigents, and also to these expatriates, especially the Chinese that are here. And so if the need arises, we have to reach out to them, whether we like it or not, and find a prudent way to use them to lobby through themselves to their government.
Okay, I'll be interested in knowing the experience dealing with Chinese officials, but just hold on for me, Dr. Obeng. Let's also bring in Dr. Ishmael Honovo, who's an international relations expert. And Doc, you've had an experience in China, so you know how the systems operate there and how, of course, the government officials there would behave. Are you surprised by this fact that our Ghanaian authorities are not able to establish any firm relations or connections with the relevant authorities that will open these negotiations on our external debt relief? Doc, if you can hear me, you would first of all have to unmute, but I'm asking that, given your experience in China, are you surprised, first of all, that we're not even able to commence the negotiations as of now on the external debt restructure? Okay, it appears we're having some challenges connecting with Dr. Ishmael over there. But Dr. Obeng, you're still with us, and I was just asking about your experience dealing with Chinese authorities. I mean, you ply your trade there, your members often go to China. Do you see a possibility, looking at the posture of the Chinese government, that this will be an easy task for us as a nation?
Yeah, that's why I initially said that Chinese are very strict and very stringent in some of these things. And they have their ways of doing some of these things. And we have to ask the necessary questions as to how to go through this. We do not have the precedent in the first place. We have not even done it as a business community to go pleading to the international community, let alone the Chinese. So we have, if we have to do that, then we have to seek for some answers to some questions that we require to know. Otherwise, we'll be chasing the wind, because they are very strict, and their dealings are very different from the Western, and that we have to find out how to go about this. But that's why I'm saying that the best way to do this is to go through their businesses here, and that we can reach out to them, and then we also go through their embassy. But for that, we have unlimited, unhindered access to their embassy, and that we can communicate. But as to how the processes will go, it will follow from there.
Okay, but now there's something that's certain: the fact that we're not getting it easy with China. 1.7 billion US dollars at stake now, and that in fact has a wider implication in terms of our ability to go ahead with the IMF bailout. As a business community, you must be worried about this, isn't it?
Definitely, because we are all in expecting this bailout, and if you given the timelines, we are expecting that by March we'd have heard some good news. So if this become a stumbling block, then definitely we will not be happy about it at all, and that's why it is necessary that if this call from the German ambassador is anything to go by, then we have to take it very serious as soon as practicable to start reaching to the Chinese government through the businesses here and our association with
right. And I recall that when all of this started, you issued a statement asking government to implement some recommendations from the position of Gutta that will help in our economic recovery. We'll get to that shortly, but let's hear from Dr. Ishmael Nwovo as well. And Doc, thank you for joining us. Doc is now on the telephone lines. And Doc, the point about your experience in China, I was just asking about that because you've had the opportunity to be there before. Looking at their society, their governance architecture, is it surprising to you that our authorities are not able to even commence negotiation on this external debt relief?
Okay. Good afternoon to you and your viewers. It is not surprising that at this point, we have not been able to make any breakthrough in terms of contact with the Chinese government. Remember that the Chinese have their New Year somewhere in February, and therefore within 2 or 3 weeks, normally, business and other activities will come to a halt in the whole of China to allow them to celebrate their Chinese New Year. And therefore, it depends on the time that the government of Ghana started to make the appeal or started to make effort to contact the Chinese. If it is just within within this period of February, then you may run into some challenges because of their peculiar cultural and social arrangements that allow them to do certain things within certain periods.
Okay, so what you're saying is that usually you wouldn't find Chinese authorities sitting down to do anything within February to March?
Yes, normally society virtually comes to a standstill to allow them to celebrate their Chinese New Year. But then that also depends on at which point we make contact to have a sort of negotiation. If it is not before that period, then it will always be a little bit difficult to make contact within the period where they are celebrating their New Year. Everything will be concentrated on domestic issues. And remember that the Chinese themselves are having problems still with COVID. So they'll be dealing with some of these domestic issues during that period, making sure that while the people celebrate their Chinese New Year, they don't end up spreading the virus and so forth and so on. So you may not necessarily make a lot of inroads during that period because of what the festivities and all those kind of things. But again, even if you make contact with the Chinese officials, you must remember that China does not operate like within the G20 framework, where they are clearly laid down rules and structures for debt cancellation and debt forgiveness. What has happened over the years is that if you look at Chinese debt cancellation and restructuring, they normally do it at their own terms. Indeed, most of the debt that they have canceled and forgiven are debts that are zero interest loans, which are nearing maturation. So in 2019, for instance, about 27 countries debt were canceled. But if you scrutinize those loans, they were those loans that have virtually during getting to maturation, and there are something small left on them. But our situation is a little bit complicated because of commercial lending. Normally, it is quite difficult to get the Chinese to agree to restructure the commercial one. So, but that does not also imply that Ghana cannot make a breakthrough. Remember, China as a lender has lent to so many of the developing countries, and therefore any debt restructuring agreement with any of these debtor nations will automatically translate to you having to agree a similar term to other nations. So we must put all these variables together and then ask the relevant question after the point that our officials were making the contact. Because when this whole program started, I think that what we are doing, the domestic debt exchange, we should at the same time be also looking at the international level. But it seems that we were concentrated on getting the domestic deal done. Then we can now engage the international creditors. And remember, there was this process. There is this process underway to get a sort of debt relief for all these countries that are in debt distress, including Zambia. So within that framework, yes, the G20 framework, the Paris Club, as we call them, it is easier to do because it's clearly structured. But China does not operate within that framework. So yes, any negotiation with them will be a little bit more complex than those Western and traditional donors.
If I'm to go by what you're telling us now, I'm afraid you're telling us that government's target of hitting or assessing the IMF conditionalities by the first quarter of this year may be delayed.
Yes, because we have not made contact yet with our largest creditor, and these negotiations take time. Remember, the Chinese economy itself is not in that good state, and therefore any debt rescheduling on the negotiation will also have implications for them. But again, we must look at it from the perspective that in the nature of relation that with the Chinese in terms of our trade and other commercial interests, if we are not able to restructure our debts and we are pushed to the wall, it may not order well for the Chinese business interest in Ghana. So yes, on that premise, we may achieve some breakthrough, but the time frame within which we are working may not allow the Chinese may not allow us to engage the Chinese for them to consider the proposals we have. Because remember, you cannot push them to accept whatever you are presenting. In any case, you have to do your homework properly before you even engage them. If you listen to the German ambassador very well, there are still issues domestically that have been addressed. That is, one of it is in the power sector, where we are still accumulating debt. So we still have a lot of work to do domestically to be able to convince some of the creditor nations that we are ready for the bailout.
This is just developing, but we're grateful, Dr. Ishmael Longwell, for joining us. Dr. Joseph Obeng, and that's where I want to round off this conversation on about the way forward, because I recall last year you issued that communique to government asking them to take a raft of measures that will safeguard the Ghanaian economy. That of course, was not heeded. Here we are today. So where do we go from here?
I think fundamentally we have to restructure some of the things that we do, and that is even more important than this bailout things that we are doing. Because if you go for bailout and we still do the same old things that we're doing, we will achieve nothing.
Anyway. Dr. Obeng, we seem to be losing you there.
We do our things, and that will necessarily take us out of this mess that we have in.
Anyway, I'm grateful. P.S. We lost the very last word, but thank you for joining us here on The Pulse. And as economists, finance experts, and also government officials brainstorm how to steer Ghana out of the adverse economic conditions, the British High Commissioner to Ghana has suggested ways that could augment the efforts being made. Harriet Thompson is urging Ghanaians to keep up a strong spirit of volunteerism as a major block for nation building. Well, she said this at an event to honor a tireless volunteer and fundraiser for about 50 years here in Ghana. There's more in the following report.
It is in recognition of these valuable services to the British community in Ghana and to Scottish-Ghanaian relations that Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II appointed you to be a member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire.
Labranda Akufo-Addo received a badge of honor in the name of the late Queen Elizabeth II as a member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire for her 52 years of voluntary work in Ghana. Brenda, as she's commonly known, has been a key member of the Caledonian Society of Ghana, which was instrumental in the setting up of the burns unit at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. Brenda did not see this coming.
I was totally astonished because I was told I should come to the High Commission and I should come alone. When I came in, it was so beautifully set. So it was a very big surprise when I discovered what it was. I was gobsmacked.
British High Commissioner to Ghana, Her Excellency Harriet Thompson, underscored the importance of voluntary work and why people must be encouraged to partake in it despite the economic downturn.
From the grassroots level, sharing food with people, through to the higher level organisations working out what they can do to support their employees, from their family perspective as well as the wider community. The advice that people can give to people that they know or to people even in government, frankly. So at all of the different levels, as communities are experiencing hardships, volunteering becomes even more important.
The recipient of the Badge of Honor, Labranda, shared a bit of her journey with JoyNews and why values of community and service must be upheld.
I served on several places, like I can't even remember, Deputy Chieftain and Treasurer. So that formed one of my first introductions into what foreigners do in Ghana while they're here. And it was quite uplifting to discover how much they were doing to try and help. If you want to do something strongly enough, it's usually possible.
She was joined in celebration by her family, friends and loved ones.
At first I was a little skeptical because the way she got the invite, I was like, hey, have you been scammed or what's going on? Someone's asking you to come alone to the British High Commission? This sounds weird, Mom. But really glad that it turned out to be authentic and that it really was recognition of the work she's done and her contribution to making connections between Ghana and Scotland.
In a way, I'm kind of glad it happened at this time, because when you get to a certain age, you start to feel irrelevant in the world. You're not so sure of your contribution. So for our mum, I think it was perfect timing to just build up her confidence again and remind her of all the good that she's done for other people and for the country that she comes from, Scotland.
Linda Dako's report for JoyNews.
Let's build up to that major election happening in a matter of hours. Nigerians will head to the polls to elect a new president to lead them for the next 4 years. We have all the analysis on this for you, but already the terminals here in Accra are empty in the capital as Nigeria shuts its borders ahead of the polls. If you're not already in, you may find it difficult to do so. Before all of these analysis, my colleague Mapito Sibidi was at the transport terminal here in Accra to check out the situation.
Thomas and John, and we're going to discuss the Nigerian elections as the country goes to the polls tomorrow. What has been the assessment of the current, the ruling party? I'll start with you, John. First of all, let's take a look back at Buhari's administration and your thoughts on it so far.
So far, what I have to say about the Buhari administration in Nigeria, in fact, there's nothing good to write about it since ever. I have not seen such a thing in Nigeria. But what we are seeing this time around is something as insecurity everywhere. There's crises everywhere, killings, a lot of killings from the east, from the north, from the west. In fact, the issue of the election, we pray, let God help us for the election. Because the election, we don't know how the outcome, we don't know how it's going to end tomorrow, but I believe God will do everything.
So is there a reason why you are not going tomorrow? Or today?
Yes, the problem is just I was supposed to be in for the election, but the only little challenge I had was I was attacked by robbers and they made away with my bag and my PVC, so I was not able to cast my vote. That was
Okay. So, Thomas, your thoughts on the APC and Buhari's administration so far in the 8 years?
For the past 8 years, the things in Nigeria is not moving as it was. Jonathan, people have been complaining about Jonathan, but things were moving well. But this APC did not go well, especially the entail of the attorney house, money scarcity. Very, very, very tedious and serious matter in Nigeria, as I'm speaking. You have money in bank, you cannot withdraw money. You go to ATM, people are crying, fighting up and down to get their own money, you will not get it. Before you get money, you have to use money to buy money in Nigeria. In fact, at the moment, Nigeria is facing a lot of challenges. So we pray to Almighty God. The election should go smoothly tomorrow, and Nigeria should wisely vote for the choice. That is what.
Talking about their choice, who do you think might take it?
Oh, well, the majority of the Nigerians prefer P2B, but politics in Africa as well. It's a different game entirely.
So, who do you think might take it tomorrow?
My prayer is for P2B to take it, because we need somebody who will come and rescue us from this mess. Because what we are seeing, in fact, this time around, we are not talking about a party. The party is a different thing. We are talking about a candidate who have the masses in mind, who can give us what we want. We need P2B. We need P2B, and we want him to come and rescue us out of it.
The concerns here on the streets of Accra by the Nigerians. Here's what we know. 94 million citizens in 36 states who are eligible to vote and will be required to select a president from 18 candidates, of which only 3 are key contenders. Then we have 18 presidential candidates, 3 top candidates there in your shots. Peter Obi, you have Atiku Abubakar, and of course the former Lagos governor in your pictures there. But beyond that as well, there are other issues that you need to know about. In the Senate itself, 109 seats, 360 in the House of Representatives for the Nigerian legislature. So those are some of the facts we know about the details of Parliament or its legislative architecture there in Nigeria. And that's where, of course, a lot more is happening as well. That unfortunate news that we heard of about one of the candidates going into the Senate being burnt to death together with his aide, unfortunately. But here's what we also know about, for instance, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who's the candidate for the All Progressives Congress. So he was senator 1992 to 1993, also one-time former governor of Lagos, as I was indicating, in 1999 to 2007, a co-founder of the All Progressives Congress, APC, in 2013. And he goes out to say that, for instance, well, he personally made President Buhari the president of the state, a reason for which he's confident going into the elections. He was also one-time governor of the state of Lagos from 1999 to 2007, and the first presidential election run. So let's also talk about the others in the race, the top 3 as we're focusing on, because there's also Atiku Abubakar, one-time vice president of the country, 1999 to 2007, but he's made several attempts. He was also the national vice chairperson of the People's Front of Nigeria in 1989. He started his journey quite long and was one-time governor of the Adamawa state in 1999. And the 5th presidential election run, 1993, 2007, 2011, 2015, and the infamous 2019 elections, of course, but he's making another attempt here again. And then there's the new face, breakaway man, as some will call him, but of course he's the well-known as the former governor of the Anambra state between 2006 to 2014, and the youngest ever chairperson of a Nigerian bank, that's Fidelity Bank, and the best performing governor on the issue of immunization in southeast Nigeria in 2012. So those are the credentials of Peter Obi, of course, attempting to break the duopoly in Nigeria. In all, 93.4 million eligible voters, 18 presidential candidates going into this contest, and it does assure you that there's a lot going into these elections. We're not ending in a matter of a day or two. And that's why Nigeria is so much of essence to not just the country itself, but the West Africa sub-region, because whatever happens to that polls has an implication for the entire region. Here's how the polls are conducted in the Nigerian presidential elections. The president is elected using a modified two-round system. To be selected or elected in the first round, a candidate must receive some sort of plurality of the valid votes and over 25% in at least 24 of the entire 36 states. If no candidate passes this threshold, a second round will be held that should happen between the top candidate and the next candidate to have received a majority of votes on the highest number of states. Now, the 109 members of the Senate are elected from 109 single-seat constituencies, 3 in each state and 1 for the Federal Capital Territory. So it's the first-past-the-post voting system which takes place there, but not the same as what happens to the presidential. Now, the 360 members of the House of Representatives are equally elected by the first-past-the-post voting or polling in the single-member constituency. So that's why we're having the conversation today. Why does the Nigerian election matter to us so much, and what's its relevance to the West African sub-region? We can now bring in some analysts who are helping us to do the discussions here on the polls. We'll tell you about the analysts joining us shortly, but just a recap of some of the issues coming up shortly. You need to pay attention to the voter population of some 90 that's over 90 million people voting in the elections. And we do also know that they're using the first-past-the-poll system for the legislative elections as well. Let's speak to Chukwuemeka Eze. He's joining us. Nigeria obviously is facing a host of challenges, as we know, Chukwuemeka Eze. But of course, the elections will be up in a matter of 24 hours. First of all, tell us about the mood in Nigeria and what's happening ahead of the elections. Chukwuemeka, if you can hear me, I'm just asking about the mood in the country right now ahead of the crucial elections.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. The name is Kelechukwu, so just to be sure. I don't know if you can hear me.
Kelechukwu, I can hear you. Apologies for that. Of course, we also need to tell you that Kelechukwu is an analyst at the SBM Intelligence in Nigeria. He's also joining the conversation. Chukwuemeka appears to have some challenges. But Kelechukwu, if you can hear me, just go ahead. You're talking about the mood in Nigeria as we speak.
Okay, sorry, I did not know I was not the only one on the call. Okay, so like you pointed out, a candidate from the Labour Party was murdered. That was on Wednesday in Enugu. And we've been seeing reports of sporadic attacks across. There was an attack in Rivers State in South Nigeria on a particular radio station there. So there's some sporadic violence that's been reported, but largely people are stocking up, and we predict that there could be run-ups. So people are because people already know that this is going to be a closely contested election, and so everyone is stocking up and just basically trying to stay within their communities and to not get caught up in any situation that might occur. And security agents have been deployed across the country, and campaign has now stopped. Everyone is waiting to see what happens.
We'll get into the demographics of those elections, but how about the security arrangements, even before we get into the figures?
So, like I said, there's been a mixture of army and police officers across different parts of the state. That's usually what happens across even state elections in the country. There's always heavy deployment of security. So that's usually the security arrangement, basically a joint arrangement between all the security forces and, like you reported, border closures, and so yeah, that's what it is.
The over 90 million population, usually what happens? Well, this is the first time you're having this number, but given the obvious huge figures that you deal with in terms of the voter population in Nigeria, how is the process conducted in such a manner that will ensure convenience, by the way? I'm just imagining that.
Before, like, are you speaking of what happens on election day?
Yes, precisely, in terms of the numbers, because now we are dealing with a population of over 90 million. It's the first time you're having that number, but not the first time we're having or seeing such a significant population going to an elections within the sub-region. I'm just asking about the process. Usually, what would happen? How does the INEC ensures that there is convenience? People go through the queues easily. I'm just trying to imagine the situation.
So we have basically, first of all, we have over 176,000 polling units for this election. That's to ensure that there are polling units are a bit more accessible and closer to people. Last 4 years ago, I think we had about 170,000 or less. So you can see that there's an increased amount of polling units being made available. We have 93.4 million voters. It was 84 million last time out. The process used to be rigorous. So you have a session where you come for accreditation in the morning, and then you come back in the afternoon to vote. Then card readers were introduced. There were issues with the card readers as well, as to, okay, is it identifying your voter card? Card readers are not identifying people's voter cards. They had to bring out what you call incident forms, and they had to basically try to register people manually. That was really, really rigorous. Someone told me yesterday that if it was the old way, he was not going to vote. But it's not the old way. So what INEC is doing this time around, they are using the bimodal voter accreditation system. And what that does is it identifies your voter card. You bring your voter card, it looks at the voter identification number, then it identifies you either by your fingerprint or facial recognition, and you proceed to vote. And then the accreditation numbers the accreditation numbers are on that tab, the BVAS tab. And when the election results are produced for that polling unit, you use the BVS to stamp it, upload it on INEC's viewing portal, and then you make sure, so the accredited voters must tally with what has been snapped by the BVS. If it does not tally, the presiding officer for that polling unit is supposed to nullify that election. So just to answer your point again, what we do is use the delineation of creating new polling units to manage the population size and make sure that polling units are a bit closer to people.
Okay, just hold the lines for us. Let's also hear from Dr. Chukwuemeka Eze. He's the Executive Director for the West African Network for Peace Building, WANEP. Doc, thank you for your time. Nigeria is heading to the polls in just a matter of 24 hours. For you, what's crucial on the agenda? We know that security obviously came up some time ago. The INEC is assuring that there are measures in place to check that.
Well, first of all, is to acknowledge that this is an existential election for the country, and also with some ramifications on the sub-region, considering Nigeria's role, whether in the area of peace and security, or also in the area of deepening democratic practice and democratic ethos around the continent. And so issues around security is further heightened by the already existing vulnerabilities, including issues around kidnapping, banditry, Boko Haram, violent extremism, issues around economic hardship, and so on and so forth. So all this will play its own role and also determine how the citizens go about in the attempt to exercise their franchise. But not also forgetting that the frustrations and also the mobilization, as it were, of the thought force is also leading to some kind of new dynamic as it relates to the electoral process.
But then how about the process itself? We're seeing some unique features now. For instance, the emergence of a new force, a third force, if you may want to call them as such, going into the elections. How is that likely to influence the process?
The first thing to acknowledge is how this third force have been able to mobilize voters, especially the young voters. In the past, and I also think that let's not remove the fact that the improvement in the electoral law is also a determinant of how people have been able to key into this electoral process. The trust on the electoral system and the electoral process have increased tremendously because of the new electoral law. And that's also going to determine way and manner people are going to turn out in this election. And therefore, I think that there are a few dynamics that we must look at. Number one is the emergence of the third force. Nobody gave any other political party other than the PDP and the PDP a chance. Now they are a force. The second thing is, like I said, the introduction of the new electoral law, which includes also the beavers, and which has increased the trust of the citizens on the electoral process. The third is also some of the elements that have been introduced in the electoral process, including shifting attention from the political parties and the politicians to the citizens as those who will determine the outcome of the election. Then the demography, which is how the young people of Nigeria between the ages of, I would say between the ages of 18 to maybe 39 or 40, have now become a force that will determine the outcome of this election, especially based on the registration and the PVC collection.
Okay. But then it appears that this time round that the focus on the Senate or the legislative elections has not been that much. Is it because of the kind of traction and competition we're seeing in the presidential race this time round?
Well, I don't think that is the case. You know, most of the senatorial elections, National Assembly elections are focused on constituency. The presidential election is more national in character. And for the first time, a new dynamic that is introduced in the election is that you have 4 geopolitical zones as the front runners in this election. You have Southeast, represented by the Labour Party candidate, Mr. Peter. You have the Northeast, represented by the former Vice President, His Excellency Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. You have the Southwest, represented by former Governor and former Senator Ashwaji Ahmed Bola Tinubu. And then you have the Northwest, represented by former Governor and former Senator Rabiu Kwankwa. So out of the 6 geopolitical zones in the country, you have 4 of them as the front runners. So that's also giving momentum to the electoral process. And then you also have the issues around religion, ethnicity, and so on and so forth. So there is a whole lot of dynamics, including the fact that for the past 8 years, for the first time, President Muhammadu Buhari is not on the ballot paper. So you have entirely new people seeking the employment positions of the president that are coming in from the outside, as it were.
We know that at WANEP, for instance, you have your early warning mechanism. So what's your dashboard telling you about the Nigerian elections?
I think that for us, what we have observed is that the more transparent the process is, irrespective of the frustrations of the politicians, the more likely we are going to have acceptability of the outcome of the election. And I think so far, INEC has proven that it is transparent and ready to conduct this election. The second thing is the professionalism of the security agents. Unfortunately, the security agencies are not just made up of the army and the police. They are also going to be supported by other sister agencies, in which case there will be multiplicity of actors within the security milieu that will help to address security issues in this election. If they also maintain high level of integrity, then it means that the probability for the acceptance of the outcome of the election will be very high. However, if on the other hand, that's our prediction, if on the other hand, there are elements of ambiguity, not in terms of the text of the electoral law, but in terms of the implementation of the electoral law, then it will be an avenue for chaos, especially given that the stakes are so high in this particular election.
But by and large, you expect that process to be very smooth. Let's talk about the implication for the West Africa sub-region itself. Why is the Nigerian election of importance to West Africa?
My brother, I want you to imagine if Nigeria implodes tomorrow. Where are the citizens going to be in terms of refugee flow within the sub-region? That's number one. Number two is that Nigeria is no mean player with regards to the economy of the sub-region. So anything that affects the peace and security of the country, especially political instability, will have a toll on the entire region's economic fortunes. And then, of course, the ripple effects of heightened insecurity in Nigeria within the sub-region that is already challenged. The sub-region itself is already challenged, whether it is the Sahel region or the Gulf of Guinea or the Senegambia axis. They are already challenged with a lot of insecurity. So we cannot afford to have any addition to these already existing vulnerabilities, especially as it relates to insecurity and economic hardship.
We would not expect that that process will be smooth, except to say that the complications, the banknotes crisis, fuel crisis, these latest factors appear to be marring that beauty of what would have been a smooth democratic exercise. Should it be of concern to actors in Nigeria?
Well, I think there are two schools of thought to that. The first school of thought thinks that this will lead to voters apathy. The other school of thought, where I belong to, maintains that this could actually increase, as it were, people's anger to actually go out and vote against or in favor of policies that they don't think meet their expectation. Whichever way it goes, my point, speaking from the point of view of an early warning expert, is that the Nigerian citizens are on the edge. If you take a flashback to what happened during the EndSARS saga, the citizens are on the edge. And therefore, the trigger factors, the indicators that could lead to triggers are so many, because already the environment is fertile for any act of violence. And therefore, whatever the Electoral Commission does, whatever the security agents, whatever the election management bodies as in its entirety does to ensure high level of transparency will go a long way in ensuring that there is no violence in this election.
Okay.
Once it is clear and transparent to everybody, I am almost 100% certain that the Nigerian citizens will accept it as their fate.
Okay, I want to bring in, and Doc, you might just want to hold on for us. Let's bring in Alassane Bello. He's also a political and conflict analyst. Bello, welcome to the show. In fact, the northern dynamics comes to mind, because that's an aspect we've not explored a lot on the show, as to how the northern parts of Nigeria may vote in this election, given the new wave of the third fourth from the likes of Peter Obi. The criticism is, this is the man from the south. How is he going to appeal to the northern part of Nigeria? Well, what's the dynamics really, and break it down for us?
Well, thank you for having me. I think, first of all, the emergence of Peter Obi is not really a surprise. If you realize that
in the event of the bad outcome of the NSAS, how the whole incident happened at Lekki Tobut, you could see that the youth were angry and were looking for an alternative. So Peter Obi is not really a young person, because he's calling his 60, another pensioner. But relatively, compared to all the other candidates, Peter Obi becomes the only alternative they have. And when you put Atiku and Tinubu in a bracket, Atiku represented the old guard, the old PDP regime that the youth felt have been mismanaged the country for 16 years. And then Tinubu and APC were presumed to be the new alternative. And then, boom, where we were. So, but then, when they say the youth vote is, what do you call it, should I say, encouraging Peter Obi or supporting Peter Obi, the vote is not monolithic. You see, Nigeria is more or less 2 countries within one. Because you have 12 states in the north implementing Sharia law. But every student of politics knows that there can be multiple conforming laws within a country, but there cannot be 2 antagonistic laws in one country. So if you look at the Nigerian constitution, and then you put Sharia law, and you do a comparison,
juxtapose that.
They are antagonistic of each other. So, but then, how did we get to the point where Sharia becomes an issue? It's about outlook. Whilst the South is more globalized, more westernized, the North is equally very conservative, and then I think more inward looking. So security will be a factor. But then let's do a comparison between the Northeast and the Northwest. The Northwest have more voter population than the Northeast. But then one of the reasons why PDP lost the election in 2015 was because of insecurity in the Northeast. But then if you look at performance of APC government today, I mean, security-wise, they've done well in the Northeast. But just oppose it to the North Central and the Northwest, that's when you begin to see the, I think, should I say, failures along the line. So security will be a factor when it comes to the northern vote. And then another thing is about, in the North, identity matters more than any other thing.
And that's why I was asking the question, because you have Atiku Abubakar, quite a big trump card for him, I mean, going into the elections, the fact that he identifies with the people. I mean, his choice of running mate also comes from there, correct?
No, his choice of running mate is from the South.
That's from the South, yes. But looking at his identity, as I was talking about, plus, of course, the fact that he comes from the North, correct? I mean, looking at all of these factors, that plays, I mean, comes with some advantage for him.
Well, that would have been an advantage. But if you put Atiku in a bracket with other northern leaders, Atiku is seen to be more liberal. You remember when the issue of the Deborah incident, the lynching of the Deborah, the lady, the young lady came up? There was a tweet that had to be deleted because he was condemning the act. And then there was a backlash from the northern core. So Atiku, being a northerner, does not really have that kind of northern support, as in that you say, compared to what Buhari has. Buhari has fanatic loyalty in the north, but you can't put him in the context. But then Tinubu, being a southwestern Muslim, tend to look as if, but to a typical northerner, there's no distinction between a liberal northerner like Atiku and a southwestern Muslim. So now let's put their running mate. This is where the running mate begins to become an advantage, right? Here he has a Christian running mate. It appeals to the zoning within the, within the PDP. The zoning that is presumed that APC has disrupted by bringing 2 Muslims. But in 1993, you had also 2 Muslims, Abiola and Kinibi. Then Kasim Shettima becomes an advantage to Tinubu's ticket because he's a northerner. He seems to be, more northern than Atiku's liberal image in context, in quote.
You're doing that relatively.
Relatively. And then he's also from Borno State. And that's one of the states where APC has had marked improvement. But if you go back to also 2015 and 2019 election, in 2019, PDP did well in the Northeast, that is where Atiku is from, vis-a-vis APC doing well or retaining its, lead in the Northwest. You see the issue? So now, when you put the two, it looks more like an open context, even though Atiku is a northerner, as against Tinubu being a southerner. But the other advantage Tinubu's ticket has is the fact that he's coming with a, a northern running mate. And if you quite remember when Yar'Adua was brought on board.
Tinubu is coming with the northern running mate.
When Yar'Adua was brought on board, people felt Obasanjo brought Yar'Adua so he could manipulate him to have influence behind the scene because of his poor health. Now, if you bring Tinubu with the allegation of him having a poor health situation, it puts, Kashim Shettima on the seat, because if Tinubu is outside the country, everybody was outside the country, and Osibanjo was taking decision. Definitely, what do you call him? Kassim Shettima will have to take decision.
Right.
That still gives the North another advantage.
Yeah.
So the North would be more interested in power and identity than the basic issue of bread and butter. Right. And when you put the equation into the bracket, you see that APC's ticket tend to have a lead beyond the fact that Tinubu is a Westerner.
That's your prediction.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Eze, you have some thoughts on that, the northern dynamics?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to make predictions in terms of how candidates will fare.
Yeah.
But I think that there are dynamics actually, and I agree fully with my brother on the studio that it's neither here nor there. There is no ticket in this election that you can consider to be perfect. All of them came with their running mates on the basis of what they are judged to have to be an advantage. Tinubu of APC received a lot of backlash for going on Muslim ticket. But if you look at it probably from a moral perspective or from a religious perspective, you might be right. But if you look at it from his own calculation, political calculation, it is that he felt, as at that time, because P2B was not a force at that time, so he felt that Northwest would be in his kitty. He felt that Southwest would be in his kitty, especially because Buhari is from Northwest and APC controls the entire Northwest, as it were, with the exception of Sokoto State. And then he is from the Southwest, so definitely they will go with him. And he also wanted to disrupt the Northeast, which is supposed to be Atiku's own base. So with that calculation, he probably might be thinking, okay, more about winning the election than any other emotional feeling anybody will come with. But there is a new dynamic, which is the emergence of Mr. P2B. Mr. P2B is appealing to the elites, not the political elites, but the education elites. He's appealing to the younger generation and so on and so forth. So it brings in a new dynamic which makes North Central contestable. A lot of people are thinking that with what is going on, if you look at the educational curve of Nigeria, most of the places where you consider to have high level of literacy, a lot of people are projecting that probably P2B will win the election. So others are saying that any vote, if there are 10 votes for P2B, that if P2B was not on the ballot paper, that 7 would have been Atiku's votes. So if P2B hurting the two candidates or just hurting the candidacy of Atiku Abubakar, we'll find out tomorrow. But in my opinion, this is one election that I am not sure that any of the candidates can go and sleep and say, yes, I'll win this election. Not Tinubu, not Atiku, not P2B.
Bello, your take on this?
Well, I think he has a very important point. North Central will be another place to look at. But then let's also put the North Central in perspective. There are some portions of the North Central that has more affinity to the South, with the South, as against other part of the North Central that has more affinity with the North. So if you put a place like, let's say, Benue State. Benue State is geographically a North Central state.
Right.
But in terms of affinity and cultural-wise, it is largely Christian and more tilted towards the South culturally than anything.
Right.
But if you put places like, let's say, Bauchi or Kwara State, which is Kwara
Bauchi
State.
Is not east. Bauchi is not east.
No.
Let's say Plateau State, for example.
Okay.
Plateau State. You could see that even if you remember the chaos in Jos, the chaos in Jos has a religious coloration, whereas it was just an issue of bread and butter. The Muslims against the Fulani herders against what you call it. Yeah. So the Northwest and the North Central will be a very contested zone. But another question we need to look at is, Peter Obi is benefiting from the EndSARS movement. And that is why it's very relevant in this.
Is this scientific? Is this a scientific
well,
statement?
if you look at the social, if you look at the, what do you call it, the EndSARS, it was galvanized on social media. And if you look at Peter Obi's presence on the social media, there has some linkage with that. But then how does he translate that into votes on the ground?
And that's the biggest question.
That's the biggest question.
Facing him.
And then until we go to the polls, you can't tell.
Right.
But then, if you look at places like, but if you look at security-wise in the North Central, APC has equally had a lot of failures and challenges over there. We've seen continuous clashes between farmers and herders. We've seen this attempt to bring the Ruga, reservation. So we've seen a lot of backlash against APC. So the argument that security will have worked for them, security will work only for APC in the Northeast. But the North Central becomes an open card where everyone will poach from the other.
Right.
You get the point?
Yeah.
But another issue we need to look at, the fourth candidate on the list, Kwankwaso.
Okay. You feel he's a force to reckon with?
He may be a wild card.
Why so?
Kano is a vote bank for APC. If you look at the 2015 and 2019 election, but you have a man from Kano contesting. So how does his candidature affect APC's votes in Kano State?
Right.
And how does it undermine Tinubu's advantage? You get the point? And does that push the election to a runoff or not? We can't tell. And then Lagos State is equally, initially Lagos State has one of the, should I say, least voter turnout. Because people hardly vote in Lagos State.
Right.
But this time around, people are voting. What will be the anger? But then if you look at it across board, I think economic-wise, it will have been PDP's advantage.
Okay.
But PDP still represents the 16 years of chaos. And Peter Obi's, argument, when he was governor of Anambra State, he saved more. He's always arguing about his savings. Right. And then if you look at Nigeria's debt stock today, and all those things, you consider, even economically, Peter Obi stand a chance.
So the biggest question would be, would these the kind of following we are seeing on social media translating into the votes? I guess that's what we are not able to tell as of now, if it would indeed translate into the votes for now. But I also want us to touch on the student population that we're seeing, that new dynamics to it, the young voter population also coming up right now. Looking at the fact that they may be very active on social media, are you translating all of that votes to, for instance, Peter Obi?
Well, putting all of that vote in a lump, in a single bag, and allocating it to Peter Obi will quite be very, very, I think it will be extravagant.
Right.
Exaggeration.
Right.
We'll be exaggerating the point because you need to look at the regional dynamics, okay? A typical Northerner is more moved by identity issue because Islam is one thing that stirs the pulse of the North. As against an average Southerner who is more concerned about bread and butter, self-actualization. So if you bring a Northerner and a Southerner of the same age, perhaps their worldview or their understanding of events could differ, and that could translate into how they vote. You get the point? So the fact that the youth are banking on Peter Obi does not necessarily mean that every youth is banking on Peter Obi. So I think that is why we have to wait until the election result is announced, and then we do a proper, analysis of the vote he got from the demographic. But then largely we'll say he's benefiting from the youth vote and the anger that is directed towards APC. And to a certain extent, that does not exonerate PDP because for 16 years they equally contributed their own portion. But I think a bit on the security situation.
Right. Okay.
I think a stronger Nigeria means a healthier West Africa. If you recall, the first security challenge we had prior to this era of insurgency in the Sahel was a civil war in Liberia and Sierra Leone. Right. And it took Nigeria's initiative
to the ECOMOG.
ECOMOG.
Right.
Nigeria taking the lead. But the reason why Nigeria could not deploy in the current situation was that Nigeria itself has its own domestic security issue to address. Right. And that is how come we have multiple international players across the region. Now you have the Russians through the Wagner Group, you have the French, you have the EU, you have the UN, you have multiple actors in the Sahel, in West Africa, because the hegemon that will have stepped in to solve the problem himself was having a problem to do it. Right. So a stronger Nigeria is definitely a safety net for the West African sub-region.
Okay, we need to go. Let me take your final words, Dr. Eze.
Well, I think I'm more excited about the new dynamics in the elections than anxious, as it were. I think it's no longer the time when you win party primaries and you go home and sleep and say you have won the election. And I think that my take is that power has shifted. The determinant of power has shifted from the politicians with money bags to the people. And therefore, everybody's focus is now on how to convince the masses to vote for them, as it were.
Kelechukwu, apologies. I thought you were off the line, but let me give you this opportunity as well. I'm sure you've been listening to the take by Doc and Bello in studio. Yes.
Okay, so let me just pick up some things. The first question you asked Dr. Eze on the question around ballots and why people are not looking at the down ballot elections, National Assembly and local government, the state assemblies and the governorship. So SBM did its survey and found that only 35% of respondents answered questions that had to do with the governorship elections. Only 14% answered questions that had to do with the assembly elections. And I think maybe around 20%-ish answered questions that had to do with the National Assembly. And it's historic. It's because power is concentrated at the center in Nigeria. And everybody just looks to the president and forgets that they are lawmakers, except when the lawmakers come to their constituencies, because they hardly vote. And so you don't see them, and so you just hear them in Abuja debating laws. So people do not focus on them because even in the state level, it feels like the governors control the State House of Assembly members as well. So people just tend to see what's happening at the center than what's happening right within their constituency. It's been like that in Nigeria. Then on the security question, so our poll kind of found that 48% of the respondents which we interviewed say that they've experienced electoral violence. You had 4 of the states in the Northeast getting more than that, and you had about 11 of the states in the North completely getting more than 48% of respondents saying that they've experienced issues around security. The security and the security question and the cash crunch are going to be defining factors for voter turnout. And it all hinges on voter turnout, because we are seeing Tinubu winning Lagos and Kano, and then winning most of the votes in the Northwest. And the Northwest has a lot of the votes in the Northwest, rather, not most, because we see the Christian minorities voting for him. And the Northwest has 23 million registered voters. So we are seeing a lot of that. So the PVC collection rates came out yesterday. Lagos is first, Kano is second, and Kaduna is third. Kano and Kaduna are in the Northwest. And the Northwest, Kaduna, has a large Christian population that are determined not to vote for APC and are determined not to vote for PDP. Because the ethnicity and religion really is going to play a deciding factor in this show. 30% of respondents we polled predicted religion to be a problem, religion to be a factor for them, and another 20% were ambivalent. So that's like how, So we see those things playing a big role. And like Dr. Eze said, we predict a runoff. We predict a runoff, and it's very close because Buhari is not on the ballot. No general is on the ballot, and Atiku is the only serial runner who is on the ballot.
Okay then, Bello.
Well, I think for me the election is actually being seen as a transition. We have the class of 1966, those who benefited from the coup, as the past generals.
Right.
Apart from Jonathan, I think past Nigerian leaders had one or other been linked with the coup, either directly or indirectly. Because Yar'Adua, for example, has his own brother being part of the elite, General Yar'Adua. So now there's those things, and then when you put this candidate on the list, apart from Peter Obi, Kwankwaso, Tinubu, Atiku, all emerged out of the class of 1993. Those who were young politicians. At that time, Tinubu was in the Senate.
Right.
So they came to the national fore because they were resisting the annulment of the election, and then they were also campaigning for restoration of democracy. So people see it to be a transition because Buhari is the last of the class of 1966 with military background, as against, with the exception of Obi, the current guys being what you call it, the class of 1993. So people are seen to be like an end of one era and probably the beginning of the climax of another era. But what I want to see is that I want to see if perhaps the outcome through the large galvanization of the youth by Peter Obi would disrupt what would have been a succession from one class to another to something new that we've never seen before. And then probably what would be the impact of Peter Obi's, what do you call it, emergence as a third force to reckon with in Nigeria on other upcoming elections across West Africa.
Interesting dynamics there. And you agree with the point about the runoff?
Well, I think relatively we could be heading for a runoff because this is the first time in Nigeria that you have an open election where you can't just go to bed and think you've won the election after winning the primary, as Dr. Ogochukwu said. But then, who can tell? So I think, but even if it goes for a runoff, it puts the ruling party in a disadvantage. But you know, one thing about them, what you call undecided voters, you know, most opinion polls that gave Obi the lead equally had huge undecided voters. They could do two things. One, out of fear of instability, they could just vote for continuity and they stick with the government, not because it has performed, but out of fear of instability and disruption. Or secondly, alternatively, out of anger and frustration with the ruling party, they give their vote to any other person that seems to be an alternative, even if he's not really a credible alternative. So we wait to see what happens. Is it a continuity or the emergence of an alternative?
Well, interesting dynamics. We'll find out in the next 24 hours when that process starts. But it's going to be a long weekend and the next week as well, because obviously looking at the population of over 90 million, you would obviously expect that this electoral exercise in Nigeria will travel really, really far. But we'll bring you updates here on the JoyNews channel. We're taking a break here on The Pulse. We'll be right back. Thanks to Dr. Chukwuemeka Eze and to all the team, including Bello, who also joined us in studio here. Thank you. We'll be back. At the start of President Akufo-Addo's first term in office, reintroduced a new policy to rotate the celebration of our Independence Day. Well, some years on, the Volta region now finally has that opportunity to play host to the 66th Independence anniversary. Let's bring in now the Volta Regional Minister, Dr. Archibald Yalecha, who is excited about this whole event coming to the Volta region. And there are activities already underway, for instance, a cleanup exercise in the regional capital today, just as part of activities leading to that big day on the 6th of March, when, of course, the whole of Ghana heads to the Volta region. Doc, thank you for your time here on The Pulse and welcome to the program. Congratulations, first of all, to the Volta region. But how are you preparing for this big day?
Thank you very much. Is that blessed?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. Good afternoon to your listeners and your viewers. We are ready. We are grateful to the President for honoring the Volta region with this opportunity to host the 66th anniversary celebration of Ghana's independence. We have had several meetings. Even today we are at a meeting. Various subcommittees have been formed. The chiefs have been informed. We have drawn our programs. There are national programs and local programs, and the venue is getting ready. We doing a lot of work in the town in terms of roadworks and lighting to improve the security of the town. And there are many activities that are going on in preparation for hosting this very important anniversary.
Have you settled on the venue for this event?
Yes, we have. We have settled on the venue. The venue is the regional youth resource center. That is where we are holding this event.
For those who may not be aware of this facility, is this a facility that's been there before, or perhaps it's part of the interventions that you're putting in place just to host the nation as we celebrate the Independence Day?
You know, there was a decision by the National Youth Authority under the Ministry of Youth and Sports to construct 10 regional youth resource centers across the country in the all regions. And the Volta region also had one under construction. There are 10 in all. And ours was waiting, there was work going on, and we were promised that it would be completed this year. So the contractor was on site. When the opportunity was given us to host this event, the National Planning Committee was around. We went around the various, look at the various options, and decided that the Youth Resource Center would be the best option among the three that we inspected. So then we had to speed up work. We called the contractor, called the National Youth Authority. Even the Minister of Sports himself was in town, and work is going on. The place is almost ready. I would say that the work is about 95–98% complete now. So the venue is complete. It's already an ongoing project that was started around 2018 or so. But we are happy as a region that is being completed for this celebration to come on.
And Honorable Minister, for those who are yet to come to terms with the significance of rotating this Independence Day celebration, what message do you have for such persons?
Yes, I would say that it is a very laudable idea because it's giving the opportunity to the regions to also host and also derive benefits from hosting. Because a lot of work is going on, and we are going to receive visitors from all over the country and all over the world. The special guest of honor, I understand, is the ECOWAS president, and we're going to have the judiciary, the parliament, and House of Chiefs, National House of Chiefs, and people representing all the 16 regions of our country. So they are all coming to Ho, and of course, that would improve the local economy. So when you're talking about the local economic development as a responsibility of all the assemblies, I think that this is going to play a very important role, and especially when we've been trying to market our region to investors, and also to market our region as a very important tourist destination. This is an opportunity for us to leverage on this celebration and to open up the region to ensure that the maximum benefits from hosting, apart from the immediate benefits to the community, the medium-term to long-term benefits is also derived by the people of this region. So the people of the region are very much excited about this.
Indeed, we're all excited about this, and I'm interested in knowing what we're reflecting on, given the fact that the country is facing its own unique challenges. But I also want to bring into this conversation Mama V Osu-Abuaji. She's a proud daughter of the region as well, joining us in this whole conversation as we build up to the 66th Independence Day celebration in the Volta region. Mama V, and I must confess that we're both from the Volta region, but you are much elated about this exercise. Why?
Yes, Blessed, I'm so excited. Listen, I come from the Volta region. I actually come from Angloga. I went to Zion College, and I tell you what, when I come to the region each year, I discover something new. So I'm a proud ambassador. I'm happy that we're hosting this independence anniversary. Remember in 2021, MFR POW also embarked on a mission like this to get people to visit the Volta region. It's in that same spirit. The Volta region is an amazing place. Listen, my first destination was Boomer. And for a lot of us, you know, we drive past, we see the beautiful ports. It's actually called the Port City. But I learned something new today. The people are actually from Dentra.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And in fact, these are some of the unique features about the Volta region, the beautiful people, the beautiful culture. But beyond that as well, what's that one thing, and we're running out of time, so just touch on that before we wrap up with the Honorable Minister. What's that one thing that people will discover this time around if we join through the celebrations?
Well, the thing is that there are a lot of investment opportunities in the region. So when people come to the Volta region, beyond just touring, you'd find that there are opportunities for you to also invest. So open your eyes for those opportunities when you come in the region this time around.
Thanks, Mama V, and I see that you're having fun already. I don't know if that's somewhere in the Volta region, but thank you for joining us. And Honourable Minister, quite a crucial point my colleague was raising there about investment opportunities in the Volta region. This is an opportune moment for the Regional Coordinating Council to take advantage of. What are you planning to do or to realize out of this celebration in terms of investment opportunities?
Thank you, Blessed. First of all, I would like to express our sincerest gratitude to Mama V and the team who are on the roadshow right now to market all that is going on in the region and towards the 6th anniversary celebration of our country. And also to thank Bernard Abele, MFR Pau, Jifa Bampo, Ivy Dela Prosper, Mauri Fui, and Fred Abonyo, who were very instrumental in marketing Volta Fair 2021. And now Mama V and the group are also are on the road trying to bring awareness and to open up the region to investment. You know, our key areas are of tourism, agribusiness, and also ICT. So we are ready. And we think that as people visit our region, we have new facilities coming up all the time. The hotels are ready. There are a lot of tourist attractions. And recently we commissioned the new Amajope canopy walkway, which a lot of people are visiting the region to experience. And so we have a lot of things for people to come and see. So we are believing that even the Saturday before the 6th March, that's the 4th of March, we are going to have a 12 Volta day where people are coming to the region. We take them to Afajato, we take them to Blue Waterfalls, we take some of them to Amajope canopy walkway, to the Gemi Mountain, Crocodile Ponds, to Sogah Adaklu Mountain, and many others. So apart from that, we are also expecting to establish contacts with business people who will be coming around so that they can partner local business people to expand the economy of the region and, for that matter, our country. So these are good times for us. We know we are going through challenges now, but we know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So, Blessed, we are very excited that this is happening in our region.
Well, and it looks like a mini year of return for many of us who are here in Accra. Not seen you in a while, so I hope this will be an opportune moment to reconnect. But I'm grateful for your time here on The Pulse. That's the Volta Regional Minister, Dr.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And of course, as we wrap up here on The Pulse with me, Blessed Sogah, you can log on to myjoyonline.com for more content. We have an exclusive interview with Nigerian-American musician with Timmy coming up on the Let's Talk Showbiz show this afternoon with Doreen Avio. He's widely known for playing the role Andre on popular American series Power and his song In My Bed. He talks about his recent collaboration with Ghanaian musician Kwame Eugene, his relationship with rapper 50 Cent and more. Don't miss that. It's coming up next. Thanks for watching. See you again. Bye-bye.